He thought he had everything until he saw the maid's simplicity touch his daughter's heart. From that day on, they both discovered that true wealth was not found in money. If you enjoy emotional stories, subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're listening from. Continuing, the mansion was a monument of glass and concrete, erected on the cliffs of Jurerê International, that sophisticated piece of Florianopolis where the sea seemed bluer and silence came at a high price. Seen from afar, the property impressed with its 3 floors, infinity pool and perfectly designed gardens that ended in a private staircase down to the beach. But whoever lived there knew the truth the walls hid. That house was a luxurious mausoleum, a tomb for the living, where every room echoed with loneliness. Rafael Almeida was 43 years old and owned one of the largest hotel chains in the south of the country. His name appeared in business magazines, on lists of the most influential entrepreneurs, at charity events where he smiled for the cameras with that professional expression he had mastered for so long. But when he crossed the mansion's electronic gate and silence greeted him like a cold embrace, Rafael transformed into merely an empty man. It had been 3 years since Cecilia had passed away. Pancreatic cancer, aggressive, fast, cruel, 6 months between diagnosis and funeral. 6 months that felt like 6 days. And then an eternity of days that all seemed the same. He woke up at 5:30 in the morning, exercised in the private gym on the 2nd floor, had coffee prepared by the kitchen staff, and left for meetings after meetings. He returned late at night, had a whiskey alone on the balcony, looking at the ocean he could no longer appreciate, and fell into a heavy sleep that never truly rested him. On weekends, the silence was worse. Isabella, his 20-year-old daughter, spent more time at her maternal grandmother's house or traveling with friends than there. Not that he blamed her. That house held ghosts neither of them knew how to exorcise. Among the staff who kept the property impeccable, there was a small team of 5 people. The cook, Donna Lourdes, had been there for 15 years and knew Rafael's taste better than he did himself. She had 2 kitchen assistants who rotated shifts. There was also Jorge, the gardener, a 60-year-old man who treated every plant as if it were his child. And there was her, Marina Silva, 31 years old, 1 meter and 65 centimeters tall, brown hair always pulled back in a discreet bun, honey-colored eyes that rarely met anyone else's. She was the housekeeper, responsible for the general organization of the house, the laundry, the tidying of the rooms, the flowers that always appeared fresh in the vases, the details that no one noticed, but that made all the difference. Marina had worked there for 5 years. 5 years of being practically invisible. She wasn't invisible for lack of presence. She was invisible because she had learned to be. As a child, the daughter of a domestic worker who worked in a family home in Porto Alegre, Marina grew up knowing there were spaces for her and spaces that weren't hers. She learned to walk without making noise, not to interrupt conversations, to be there without truly being there. Her mother died when she was 17, a sudden heart attack while cleaning the living room floor. Marina finished high school working in diners, washing dishes, cleaning tables, always with that polite smile that revealed nothing of what she felt inside. At 23, she met Tiago. He was a business administration student at a private university, came from an upper-middle-class family, and drove a car his father had given him as a gift. Marina worked as a waitress at the restaurant where he and his friends usually went. Tiago started talking to her, making jokes, leaving generous tips. Then came the invitations to go out, the outings, the promises. Marina, who had never allowed herself to dream of such things, believed. For 8 months she believed it was possible. She believed that love didn't see social differences, that the heart didn't ask how much you earned per month, until the day Tiago took her to meet his parents. His mother looked Marina up and down with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and asked where she had studied. When Marina answered with the name of the public school, the silence was awkward. Tiago's father quickly changed the subject. On the way back, Tiago was too quiet. 2 weeks later, he ended everything with a text message. "Marina, you're amazing, but I think we're at different stages of life. Take care." That's when something inside her broke. But that's also when she made a decision. She would never again be anyone's emotional experiment. She would never again let anyone make her feel like she wasn't enough. She would accept her invisibility. It would be better that way, safer, less painful. When she got the job at Rafael Almeida's mansion through a recommendation from Donna Lourdes, Marina saw it as an opportunity for a new beginning. The house was huge, the work was intense, but the salary was fair and there was respect. Rafael barely looked at her in the first few years. He barely looked at anyone. He lived lost in his own shadows, especially after his wife's death. Marina witnessed that man's suffering from afar. She saw when he locked himself in the office for hours, saw his red eyes on subsequent mornings, heard his footsteps around the house in the early hours when sleep wouldn't come. But she kept her distance. She did her job with excellence. She left the rooms impeccable. She changed the flowers. She folded the clothes. She organized the books. And she disappeared before anyone remembered she was there. On the 25th of October that year, Marina turned 31. She woke up at 6 in the morning in the small maid's room in the mansion's annex, a simple but comfortable space she had decorated with some plants and old photographs. She looked at herself in the mirror and wished herself a happy birthday in a low voice. There was no one else to do it. Her parents were already gone. She had no siblings. She had a distant aunt in Caxias do Sul, with whom she exchanged messages occasionally, but nothing more. During the day, she worked normally. Donna Lourdes made a quick comment in the morning, "Happy birthday, dear," and Jorge gave her a tight hug that smelled of wet earth and genuine affection. But it was just them. Isabella was traveling in Buenos Aires with her friends. Rafael had meetings all day in São Paulo and would only return at night. When her shift ended around 6 in the evening, Marina made a decision. She hitched a ride with Jorge to the nearest market, bought a simple chocolate cupcake with frosting, a numbered candle with the number 3 and the number 1, and a small Coca-Cola. She returned to the mansion when it was already getting dark. The house was practically empty. Donna Lourdes had left earlier to take care of her sick grandson. The assistants had already gone home. Jorge was in the annex resting. Marina sat at the large kitchen table, that marble table where 12 people could fit, but which rarely saw more than 2. She placed the cupcake in the center, stuck in the 2 candles, and lit them with the lighter she took from the drawer. The faint light of the small candles flickered against the stainless steel of the state-of-the-art appliances. She looked at that small flame and felt a tightness in her chest. 31 years old, 3 decades and 1 year of life, and there she was alone singing happy birthday to herself. But she sang, with a low, trembling voice, but she sang, "Happy birthday to you on this dear date, much happiness, many years of life." When she finished, she closed her eyes and made a wish. She asked for strength, only that, strength to continue, not to give up. To remain invisible if necessary, but not to lose her dignity in the process. She blew out the candles delicately, as if blowing her own dreams into the universe. She cut a piece of the cake and ate it slowly, savoring each bite. The chocolate was good. Simple but good, she smiled to herself. "You survived another year, Marina. You are stronger than you think," she murmured. What she didn't know was that she wasn't alone. Rafael had returned earlier than planned. The meeting in São Paulo had been cancelled at the last minute, and he decided to take the 5 o'clock flight back to Florianopolis. He arrived home around 7:30, tired, with a headache, wanting only to shower and sleep. He entered through the side door that led directly to the second-floor corridor, but as he passed the stairs leading to the kitchen, he heard something. A voice, low, soft, singing. Curious, he quietly went down a few steps and looked through the crack of the half-open kitchen door, and that's when he saw Marina, sitting alone at that enormous table, a small cupcake in front of her, 2 candles lit, singing happy birthday to herself. Her voice was beautiful, but there was a cutting sadness in it. There was loneliness in that corner. There was acceptance. There was dignity. Rafael was paralyzed. For 5 years, that woman had been just a discreet presence in his house, someone who kept everything running perfectly, without ever asking for anything in return, without ever complaining, without ever asserting herself. He didn't even know it was her birthday. He knew practically nothing about her, in fact, and there was Marina, in that cold, impersonal kitchen, celebrating her own existence in the only way she could, alone. Something stirred inside Rafael's chest. Was it pity? Maybe, but it was more than that. It was admiration. It was respect. It was recognition of a courage he wasn't sure he possessed. because Marina was there in that moment of absolute vulnerability and still kept her head high. She still smiled, even if only to herself. He should have announced himself. He should have entered and wished her happy birthday. But he couldn't. He felt it would be an intrusion. So he just watched until she finished the song, blew out the candles, cut the cake, and when she whispered those words to herself, "You survived another year, Marina. You are stronger than you think." Raphael felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, the desire to truly get to know someone. He went up the stairs in silence, went to his room, but couldn't sleep. He lay looking at the dark ceiling, thinking about that scene, thinking about Marina. For the first time in 3 years, Rafael Almeida was thinking about someone other than himself and his own pain. In the following days, something changed. Rafael started to notice. He noticed how Marina always arrived 10 minutes early. He noticed how she arranged the bed linens with almost reverent care, as if she were folding dreams. He noticed how she talked to the plants as she watered them, whispering things he couldn't hear, but that seemed important. He noticed the way she smiled at Jorge when he told his old country stories, how she listened to Donna Lourdes complain about her grandchildren with infinite patience, how she treated everyone with a kindness that wasn't just politeness. It was genuine goodness, and he noticed how beautiful she was. Not beautiful in a way that screamed for attention, but beautiful in a way that whispered. Her honey-colored eyes that sparkled when she allowed herself a true smile. Her delicate hands that did everything perfectly. Her soft voice that calmed without trying. Marina had a presence he hadn't noticed before because he was too busy with his own absence. On a rainy Tuesday in November, there was a blackout in the region. Lightning struck a transformer, and all of Jurere was without power for a few hours. It was night around 8 o'clock. Raphael was in his office reviewing spreadsheets on his laptop when everything went dark. He heard movement in the house, calm voices organizing themselves. He went down the stairs with his phone flashlight and found Marina in the kitchen, lighting candles and arranging them throughout the main rooms. She had prepared coffee in the old gas-powered Italian coffee maker and was serving cups to Donna Lourdes and Jorge, who were still in the house helping with some repairs. "Good evening," Raphael said, and his own voice sounded strange to him. Too formal, too distant. Marina turned, surprised. "Good evening, Mr. Almeida. I've prepared coffee if you'd like some." "Raphael," he said suddenly. "You can call me Raphael." She seemed confused for a second, but nodded. "Of course." He accepted the cup she offered and, to her surprise and even his own, sat on one of the tall kitchen stools. Marina hesitated, but continued arranging the candles. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was just different. "Thank you for always taking such good care of everything," Raphael said suddenly. "I never say thank you, but I should." Marina stopped what she was doing and looked at him. Really looked. "It's part of my job. I know. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't acknowledge it." She didn't know what to say, so she just gave a small smile and went back to arranging the candles. Raphael took a sip of coffee. It was strong, just the way he liked it. "How long have you worked here?" 5 years. 5 years, he repeated, as if truly processing that information for the first time. "And I barely know you." Marina tensed. Was he dissatisfied with something? "If there's something wrong with my work, I can improve." "No, it's not that," Raphael quickly interrupted. "Your work is impeccable. I just realized I've never really talked to you. To any of you, actually. I've been an absent employer. You've been through difficult things," Marina said softly. "It's understandable." The empathy in her voice surprised him. It wasn't pity. It was genuine understanding. As if she knew that kind of pain. "Have you also been through difficult things?" he asked before thinking if it was appropriate. Marina was quiet for a long moment. Then, perhaps because it was night, because it was dark, because there was something in the vulnerability of that moment that made defenses unnecessary, she replied, "My mother died when I was 17. She worked as a maid and had a heart attack at work. My father left us when I was a child. So yes, I know loss. I know loneliness." Raphael felt a tightness in his chest. "I'm sorry. It's part of life, isn't it?" she said with a lightness that was almost sad. "We survive. We carry on." "You survived another year," Raphael repeated without thinking, the words she had said to herself that night. Marina froze. She slowly turned to him, her eyes wide. You were there. Raphael realized what he had done. He swallowed hard. I came back earlier that day. I saw you in the kitchen. I didn't want to interrupt. It seemed like a private moment. Marina felt her face flush. Humiliation, that's what she was feeling. He had seen her in that moment of weakness, of absolute vulnerability. She turned her face away, trying to hide the tears that threatened to appear. Hey, Raphael stood up and took a step towards her, but maintained a respectful distance. Hey, please, don't be ashamed. It was the most dignified thing I've ever seen anyone do. You alone celebrating your own life with so much courage. I was impressed. I was touched. Marina quickly wiped her eyes and turned to him. It wasn't dignity. It was loneliness. No, Raphael said firmly. It was strength. It was choosing not to give up, even when no one was watching. That is dignity, Marina. That is courage. She stared at him, and for the first time since she started working there, she truly saw him. She saw a man who was also broken. She saw a man who also struggled to survive his own days. She saw someone who understood. Thank you, she whispered. The emergency generator came back on at that moment, and the house lights gradually came on. The magic of that moment in the dim light faded a little, but something had changed. Both knew. Marina cleared her throat. I'll finish arranging the candles. Of course. He returned to the office but couldn't concentrate on anything else that night. All he could think about was her. Marina. The woman who had been invisible for 5 years and who, suddenly, was the only thing he could see. And in the annex room, Marina lay on the small bed and looked at the ceiling, her heart beating faster than it should. She knew she should be afraid. She knew she should protect herself. But for the first time in a long time, she felt something she had forgotten what it was like. Hope. And hope, she knew very well, could be the most dangerous thing of all. The following weeks brought subtle but profound changes. Raphael started to appear more at home. He had lunch there when he used to always eat out. He worked in the office instead of spending the entire day at the corporate hotel downtown. And when Marina passed through the corridors with clean towels or rearranged the flower vases, he found excuses to be nearby. A question about the air conditioning temperature. A comment about the weather. Small conversations that led nowhere but said everything. Marina noticed, of course, and it scared her more than she wanted to admit. She knew that look. That interest that starts discreetly but gradually takes shape. She had promised herself, on that painful afternoon years ago when Tiago discarded her as if she were disposable, that she would never again be that for anyone. A pastime, a curiosity, a distraction from loneliness. And Raphael, however kind he was being, was her boss. He was a man from another world. A man who, when his loneliness passed, when the grief for his wife finally finished healing, would return to his place and she would return to hers. And hers was invisibility, always had been. But then the notes began. The first appeared on a Thursday morning, carefully folded on top of the basket of clean clothes she had just ironed. A cream-colored paper, folded in 4 without a name, without a signature. Marina opened it with trembling fingers and read, "There are people who make spaces more beautiful just by existing in them. Thank you for being one of them." She looked around as if the author would appear from behind a door, but she was alone in the laundry room. She folded the note back up and put it in her uniform pocket, her heart beating erratically. It could be from anyone, she tried to convince herself. It could be a gesture from Donna Lourdes or Jorge, but she knew it wasn't. She recognized the elegant handwriting, the large, firm letters. It was his. The second note appeared 3 days later, hidden between the pages of a poetry book by Cecilia Mireles that someone had left on the kitchen counter. When Marina opened it to put it on the living room shelf, the paper fell out. "I sing because the moment exists and my life is complete. You reminded me that there are still moments worth existing for." Marina closed her eyes and took a deep breath. It was dangerous. Very dangerous. He was saying beautiful things. Things that touched places she had locked away for years. But she couldn't. She shouldn't let herself be carried away. She put the note with the first one in a small wooden box she kept in her room and tried to follow her routine normally. But the notes continued. One in the vase of sunflowers she was changing in the living room. Another folded inside the cookie jar she always organized in the pantry. Each brought carefully chosen words, verses from poets, thoughts that revealed a sensitivity she didn't expect to find in that always so serious businessman. And then came the flowers. One morning, Marina entered the laundry room and found a small arrangement of white daisies on the ironing board. There was no card, no message, just the flowers, simple and delicate, the kind she would choose for herself if she were buying something. She touched the petals carefully and felt her eyes sting. No one ever gave her flowers. No one ever thought of her that way. They're beautiful, aren't they? Raphael's voice came from the doorway. Marina turned quickly, her fingers still on the petals. Mr. Almeida, Raphael, he corrected softly. And yes, I left them. I thought you deserved flowers. Not just the ones you tend for others, but some just for you. Marina swallowed hard. She needed to say something. She needed to set boundaries before this went too far. Mr. Raphael, I appreciate the gesture, but you're going to tell me it's not appropriate, he interrupted, stepping into the laundry room, but maintaining a respectful distance. That I'm your boss and you're my employee. And you're right. I know you are. But Marina, ever since that night of the blackout, ever since that conversation, I can't stop thinking about you. Not in the wrong way, not how you must be thinking, but as someone who reminded me that there's still humanity in the world, that there's still kindness, that there's still a reason to wake up in the morning. Don't say that, Marina whispered, tears finally escaping. Please don't say those things to me. Raphael frowned, confused. Why? I'm being sincere, because I've heard that before. She burst out, her voice louder than she intended. I've heard a man tell me I was special, that I was different, that there was something about me that touched him. And in the end, when his friends laughed, when his family looked at me with disgust, he just disappeared. He discarded me as if I were nothing, as if the months we spent together meant nothing. And I swore to myself that I would never be anyone's emotional experiment again. The silence that followed was heavy. Raphael was pale, processing every word. Marina, You are a good man, she continued, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I see that. But you are lonely. You are hurt by the loss of your wife. And it's natural for you to seek connection, to look for someone to fill the void. But I cannot be that person. I cannot be the distraction until you find someone from your world, someone who truly matches you. Because when that happens, and it will happen, I will be left here heartbroken again, and I don't know if I can survive that a second time. Raphael stepped forward, his hands extended, as if he wanted to touch her but didn't dare. Do you think that's what this is? That I'm using you as a distraction? I don't know what you're doing, Marina said with brutal honesty. But I know what I am. I'm the maid. I'm the one who cleans, who organizes, who is always here but never truly seen. And I prefer to remain invisible than to be seen in the wrong way. She walked past him quickly, leaving the daisies behind, and left the laundry room. Raphael stood there, her words echoing in the empty room. He had hurt someone who was already hurting. He had been selfish. He had thought only of his own feelings, his own awakening, without considering what it might mean for her. Marina was right to protect herself. She was right not to trust. And he needed to respect that, even if it hurt. That night he left no more notes, sent no more flowers. He tried to go back to his old routine, keep his distance, be just the boss. But it was too late. Something inside him had irreversibly changed. And the more he tried not to think about Marina, the more she occupied his thoughts. It was Isabella who noticed first. She had returned from Buenos Aires for the weekend and was spending a few days at the mansion before going back to the apartment she shared with friends in Balneario Camboriú. Isabella was a beautiful young woman, with blonde hair and green eyes she had inherited from her mother. She studied advertising at an expensive private university, drove an imported SUV her father had given her for her 18th birthday, and lived between parties, trips, and perfectly curated Instagram photos. But beneath all that apparent superficiality, there was an insecure girl who had never overcome her mother's death and didn't know how to relate to the distant father who remained. One Saturday morning, Isabella came down for coffee and found her father on the veranda, looking out at the sea with a cold cup of coffee in his hands. There was something different about him, something in his distant gaze, in his less rigid posture. "Dad?" she called. Raphael turned, surprised. "Isa, good morning, dear. Are you okay? You look different." Different how? Isabella sat beside him, taking a piece of toast from the basket Donna Lourdes had left. I don't know. Less dead inside, perhaps. Raphael gave an awkward smile. His daughter had always been direct. I'm just trying to live a little more. Your mother wouldn't have wanted me to spend the rest of my life drowning in work and loneliness. Mom wouldn't have wanted you to do crazy things either, Isabella said suddenly, her tone sharper. Raphael frowned. What do you mean by that? Isabella hesitated, then decided to get straight to the point. Marina mentioned to Donna Lourdes that you're being too kind to her, leaving notes, flowers. Donna Lourdes told me. Raphael felt his stomach clench. Isabella. She's the maid, Dad, Isabella said, and there was something in her voice that was part concern, part disdain. You can't confuse things. She works here. She has a position. You have another. You can't mix that. Why not? Raphael asked, and there was a new harshness in his voice. Why can't I show appreciation for someone who is kind, hard-working, human? Appreciation is one thing. What you're doing is another, Isabella retorted. People will talk, Dad. They'll judge, and she'll end up getting hurt when this passes. What if it doesn't pass? Raphael asked quietly. Isabella stared at him, her eyes wide. Are you serious? Dad, you barely know this woman. I know enough, Raphael said, standing up. I know enough to know that she is more worthy, more honest than half the people in our social circle. I know enough to know that she made me feel alive for the first time in 3 years. That's just loneliness. Isabella also stood up, her voice rising. You're confusing gratitude with something else. And when you realize that, she'll be devastated. Haven't you thought about that? I think about it all the time, Raphael replied with a calmness that surprised his daughter. And that's why I'm keeping my distance. Because she asked me to. Because she's right to protect herself. But I won't pretend I don't feel what I feel, Isabella. I've spent too much time pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Isabella was silent for a moment, processing. Then, in a softer, almost vulnerable voice, she asked, What about Mom? Have you forgotten her already? Raphael felt his heart clench. He approached his daughter and gently held her shoulders. I will never forget your mother. She was the love of my life for 20 years. She was my partner, my best friend, the mother of my daughter. But she's gone, Isa, and I remained. And I need to decide if I'm going to live the time I have left or just exist. Marina is not an attempt to replace your mother. It's a chance to remember that I can still feel. I can still care. I can still be human. Isabella had tears in her eyes now. I just don't want you to get hurt again. Or for you to hurt her. Or, I don't know. It's all very confusing. Raphael pulled her into a tight hug. I know, my love. I know. But when Isabella pulled away, there was still something in her gaze. Something that wasn't just concern. It was fear of losing her father to someone else. Fear that someone would take her mother's place. And Marina, unintentionally, unknowingly, had become the target of that fear. In the following days, Isabella began to observe Marina differently. She noticed how the housekeeper moved through the house, always efficient, always discreet. She noticed how her father looked at her when he thought no one was watching, and a resentment began to grow. It wasn't rational. It wasn't fair. But it was there. Isabella started making small, seemingly innocent comments that cut deep. Marina, wouldn't this vase look better in the living room? With a tone that suggested Marina didn't know how to do her job. I thought you'd finished the laundry by now. With impatience. Small barbs that Marina received in silence, always responding politely, always maintaining professionalism. Raphael noticed, but didn't know how to intervene without making things worse. And Marina in turn retreated even further. She became the invisible employee again, avoiding any contact beyond what was necessary, doing her work and disappearing. Until one night, Raphael couldn't take it anymore. It was almost 10 at night when he went down to get water in the kitchen and found Marina still there, finishing organizing some groceries that had been delivered that afternoon. She was tired, he could see. There were dark circles under her eyes, her shoulders slightly slumped. Marina, he said softly. She turned, surprised. I thought everyone was already asleep. I needed to talk to you. Marina tensed. If it's about my work... It's about us, Raphael interrupted. There is no us, Marina said quickly, turning back to organize the packages in the pantry. Raphael stepped forward. You're right. There isn't. But I need you to know one thing. I wasn't using you as a distraction. That wasn't it. I was being sincere. I still am. Please don't let me finish, he pleaded. I know you've been hurt. I know you're afraid to open up again. And I respect that. I will always respect it. I won't leave notes anymore. I won't send flowers anymore. I won't do anything that makes you uncomfortable. But I need you to know that when I looked at you that night, when I saw you singing Happy Birthday alone, I didn't see an employee. I saw a strong, courageous, dignified woman. I saw someone who made me want to be better. And that won't change just because I'm keeping my distance. Marina had tears streaming down her face now. Why are you doing this? Why are you making everything harder? Because you deserve to know the truth, Raphael said. You deserve to know that you are seen, that you are valued, not just for the work you do, but for who you are. I am nobody, Marina whispered. You are anything but that. They stood there, a few feet apart, the kitchen's silence heavy between them. It was Marina who broke it first. I'm scared, she admitted in a low voice. I'm scared to believe. I'm scared to allow myself to feel and then discover it was just a moment, a phase. Raphael wanted so badly to take her in his arms. He wanted so badly to say it wasn't a moment, it wasn't a phase, that it was real. But he knew words wouldn't be enough. She needed proof. She needed time. She needed patience. Then don't believe yet, he said softly. Just don't shut me out completely. Let me prove with time, with actions, that this is real. And if in the end you decide you don't want to risk it, I will respect that. But give me this chance. Marina stared at him for a long moment. He was being sincere. She knew enough lies to recognize the truth when she saw it. But the truth didn't make things any less frightening. I need to think, she said finally. As long as you need. She nodded, wiped her face with her hands, and quickly left the kitchen before her courage failed. Before she did something stupid like believing in promises again. Raphael was left alone in the lit kitchen, his heart heavy but strangely hopeful. He had said what he needed to say. He had laid his feelings on the table without pressing, without demanding. Now it was up to her. And he would wait. He would wait as long as necessary, because Marina, he was beginning to realize, was worth any wait. In the annex room, Marina lay on the bed and hugged her pillow, tears wetting the fabric. Inside the small wooden box on the nightstand, the notes she had kept seemed to pulse like living things, each word a promise she wanted so much to believe, but was so afraid to embrace. You are anything but nobody, he had said. And for the first time in a long time, Marina allowed herself to consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, that was true. December arrived, bringing the intense heat of the Santa Catarina summer and a subtle but noticeable shift in the mansion's dynamic. Raphael kept his promise. He left no more notes. He sent no more flowers. But his presence became more constant, more genuine. He started asking about Marina's day during breakfast when they crossed paths in the kitchen. He asked about Jorge and his stories from the countryside. He praised the flower arrangements she prepared. Small gestures that weren't invasive, but showed he was there, present, attentive, waiting. Marina, in turn, slowly began to lower her guard. She allowed herself to smile when he made a joke. She agreed to talk for a few minutes when they met. She no longer avoided his gaze as if it were something dangerous. She was testing the waters, cautious but curious. There was something different about Raphael. He wasn't trying to impress her. He wasn't trying to seduce her. He was just being human, being honest, and that was more appealing than any grand gesture could be. But not everything was progress. Isabella continued living in the mansion, having temporarily given up the apartment she shared with friends after an argument over unpaid bills. And her presence was a constant reminder of their different worlds, of the invisible but very real barriers that separated Marina from her father. The young woman wasn't openly hostile. She didn't need to be. Her barbs were subtle, poisoned with politeness. One day during breakfast, as Marina was serving fresh juice at the table, Isabella casually commented, "Marina, don't you think you'd look better in a traditional uniform? You know, those formal outfits. I think it would add more professionalism." The comment was followed by a sweet smile, but the message was clear. Know your place. Raphael had frowned at that moment, but Marina replied calmly, "I'll consider it, Isabella. Thank you for the suggestion." And she continued serving as if nothing had happened. But inside each of those comments was a stab. A reminder that no matter how much she and Raphael talked, no matter how much a connection was forming, to the world they remained boss and employee. Rich and poor. People from universes that didn't mix. It was on a Tuesday afternoon that Raphael announced he would be hosting a business dinner at the mansion the following Friday. It would be important, he explained to Donna Lourdes, a group of European investors interested in partnering with the hotel chain. He needed to impress them not just with numbers, but with hospitality, with refinement. "Donna Lourdes, prepare your best menu," he requested. "And Marina, I'll need you to help with the general organization. Flowers, decoration, making sure everything is perfect." Marina nodded. It was part of the job. She was used to events of that type, although she usually stayed in the background, invisible as always. But this time there was a tension in the air that she couldn't identify. In the days leading up to the dinner, the mansion became a whirlwind of preparations. Donna Lourdes tested recipes. Jorge ensured every corner of the garden was impeccable. Marina supervised the cleaning and organization of every detail. Raphael was nervous, she could tell. This deal meant a lot to him. It was an international expansion, a step that could elevate the company to another level. Isabella, in turn, was excited. She would be the hostess alongside her father, a role her mother had always performed with elegance. She chose an expensive dress, had her nails done, her hair styled. She was determined to show that she could fill that space, that the Almeida family was still synonymous with sophistication and class. On Friday, everything was ready by 7 in the evening. The dining room table, rarely used, was impeccably set with fine porcelain dishes, silver cutlery, crystal glasses that Marina had polished until they shone like diamonds. The white and green flower arrangements she had prepared added a touch of discreet elegance. Scented candles spread a gentle lavender aroma. Everything was perfect. The guests began to arrive at 8. There were 5 in total, 3 middle-aged men and their wives, all European, all exuding that kind of old money wealth that doesn't need to shout to be noticed. Raphael greeted them with his best corporate smile, Isabella beside him, shaking hands with each one, with the rehearsed politeness of someone who grew up in that world. Marina stayed in the kitchen with Donna Lourdes, helping to prepare the dishes that would be served in sequence. It wasn't her place to be in the dining room during dinner. She knew that. But Raphael had asked her to be available in case anything specific was needed, so she remained nearby, discreet as always. The dinner started well. Marina heard laughter coming from the room, the clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversations in English mixed with Portuguese. Raphael was doing well. She could tell by his confident tone of voice. Isabella, too, playing the role of the perfect daughter with mastery. It was during the second course, as Marina was bringing more wine to the table at the request of Donna Lourdes, who was busy finishing dessert, that everything fell apart. She entered the dining room with the bottle of red wine carefully held, approaching the table with silent steps. Raphael saw her and gave a discreet nod of thanks. But it was the wife of one of the investors, a blonde woman in her 50s with overly flashy jewelry, who drew attention. "Oh, you must be the maid," she said in English with a heavy French accent, looking Marina up and down. "Raphael, darling, do you still keep live-in staff here in Brazil? In France it's so rare now. Everyone uses outsourced services." Marina kept her face neutral and began to pour the wine, but the woman continued, "It's curious, isn't it? How some people are born to serve and others to be served. Everyone in their proper place, as it has always been." Her husband laughed, an uncomfortable sound. "Chérie, don't be like that." "I'm not being anything," she interrupted, taking a sip of the wine Marina had just poured. "I'm just making an observation. It's the natural order of things. There are those who think and those who execute, those who command and those who obey. It has always been this way, and it always will be." Marina felt her face flush but maintained her composure. She placed the bottle on the table and made to leave, but the woman still wasn't finished. "Can you read?" she suddenly asked, looking directly at Marina. The silence that fell over the table was heavy. Raphael tensed at the head of the table, his jaw muscles clenched. Isabella stared at her plate, her face pale. The other guests seemed uncomfortable but said nothing. "Yes, madam," Marina replied with a firm voice, although she felt her hands tremble. "How nice!" "Education is important even for people in your position," the woman said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "My grandmother always used to say that educated employees are a rare blessing." It was then that Isabella, perhaps trying to ease the tension, or perhaps just being who she always was, let out a nervous laugh and said, "It's true, isn't it? It's so hard to find truly qualified professionals nowadays. Most don't even know the basics." The phrase came out as if it were just a casual agreement, but for Marina it was like a slap. Coming from the daughter of the man who had said she was anything but nobody, that hurt more than all of that French woman's comments combined. Marina quickly glanced at Isabella, and for a second their eyes met. There was something in the young woman's gaze. Guilt, defiance, Marina couldn't tell. Raphael, however, had understood perfectly. He rose from his chair so abruptly that it scraped against the floor with a screeching sound. All eyes turned to him. The dining room, which seconds before had been filled with conversations and fake laughter, fell into absolute silence. "With all due respect, Madame Rousseau," Raphael began, and there was a coldness in his voice that Marina had never heard. "You are in my house eating food prepared by my team, being served by people who work with dignity and dedication. And you have just disrespected one of them in my presence." The woman gasped. I wasn't—" "Yes, you were," Raphael cut in. "And not only that, but you suggested that there are people born to serve, as if that were some kind of absolute truth, instead of the kind of elitist and outdated thinking that should have remained in past centuries." Her husband tried to intervene. "Raphael, let's calm things down." "There's nothing to calm down," Raphael said, still standing imposing. "You came here to discuss business. But I will not do business with people who disrespect those who work honestly. Marina," he turned to her, who was frozen by the sideboard, "is not just an employee. She is an exceptional professional, a woman of character, and someone who deserves as much or more respect than anyone sitting at this table." "Raphael, you can't be serious," another investor tried to argue. "Because of an employee you're going to—" "No, because of principles," Raphael corrected firmly. "And yes, I am serious. Dinner is over. You are no longer welcome here." The shock in the room was palpable. Isabella was livid, her hands clenched on her napkin. The investors exchanged incredulous glances. Madame Rousseau was red with indignation. "You are making a huge mistake," the main investor said, standing up as well. "This partnership represents millions. Are you going to throw everything away for pride?" "It's not pride," Raphael said calmly. "It's dignity, mine and hers. And if you can't understand that, then I don't want to do business with you anyway." One by one, the investors stood up, some still trying to argue, others just shaking their heads in disapproval. Madame Rousseau walked past Marina with her nose in the air without looking at her. Within 5 minutes, everyone had left, and the mansion returned to silence. Marina was trembling. She had witnessed everything from the hallway, where she had retreated after Raphael's outburst. Isabella was still sitting at the table, her face buried in her hands. Raphael stood in the empty dining room, looking at the still-set table, at the food that had barely been touched, at the multi-million-dollar deal he had just refused. It was Isabella who spoke first, her voice strangled. "You just lost millions of reais because of her." Raphael turned to his daughter, and there was a hardness in his eyes that she rarely saw. "It wasn't because of her. It was because of me, because of who I choose to be. You may not understand this now, Isabella, but I hope that one day you will." "How will I understand?" Isabella stood up, tears streaming down her face. "You chose her instead of me, instead of our family, instead of everything Mom built with you." "I didn't choose her instead of you," Raphael said, approaching his daughter. "I chose to do what is right instead of doing what is profitable. Your mother would have done the same thing, and you know that." Isabella shook her head, words failing her. Then she ran out of the room up the stairs in tears. The sound of her bedroom door slamming echoed through the mansion. Raphael stood alone in the dining room, the weight of the decision he had just made falling upon his shoulders. He had lost an important deal. He had created an even greater chasm with his daughter. But he didn't regret it. He couldn't regret it. When he turned, he saw Marina standing at the entrance to the room. Tears were streaming down her face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were something else, relief, gratitude, something deeper than words could reach. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "Yes, I did," Raphael replied, approaching her. "Because if I didn't defend you, I wouldn't be the man I want to be. I wouldn't be the man you deserve." Marina let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "You just lost millions, and you are worth more than any amount I could earn." They stood there, a few steps apart, the mansion's silence enveloping them like a blanket. Marina wanted so badly to cross that space between them. She wanted so badly to hug him, to thank him, to say that no one had ever done something like that for her. But there was still fear. There was still doubt. "Isabella is hurt," she said softly. "I know. But she will understand. In time, she will understand. And if she doesn't understand..." Raphael took a deep breath. "Then I'll have to live with that. But I won't live pretending you don't matter when you do. I won't live lying about what I feel when I feel it." "What do you feel?" Marina asked, her voice barely audible. Raphael took a step forward, then another, until he was so close he could feel the soft scent of flowers that always accompanied her. "I feel like you brought me back to life," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I feel that when I look at you, I see possibility. I see a future. I see everything I thought I had lost when Cecilia passed away. And that frightens me as much as it frightens you, Marina. Because it's real. Because it's intense. Because it's true." Marina closed her eyes, tears continuing to fall. "I'm so afraid to believe." "Then believe slowly," Raphael whispered. "Believe a little bit each day, and I'll be here, proving with every action, every word, every choice that this is not a lie, that you are not an experiment, that you are a choice, the choice I want to make every day." When Marina opened her eyes, Raphael was even closer, and for the first time since all of this began, she didn't recoil. She didn't run away. She stayed there, allowing herself to be seen, allowing herself to be vulnerable, allowing herself just for a moment to believe that maybe, just maybe, stories like that didn't only happen in soap operas. Maybe they happened in real life too. "A little bit each day," she repeated, her voice still trembling but firm. Raphael smiled, and it was the first genuine smile she had seen from him since she met him. A little bit each day. They stood there for a few more minutes, just existing in the same space, and it was enough. For now, it was enough. Upstairs, Isabella lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She heard murmurs coming from the dining room, but couldn't make out the words. She felt confused, angry, lost. She had agreed with that horrible woman. She had laughed. And her father had seen her do it. Her father had chosen to defend Marina, instead of closing his eyes, as he always did in their world, where appearances mattered more than truths. For the first time, Isabella began to ask herself, who was she? Who had she become? Was she the daughter of Cecilia Almeida, a woman who always treated everyone with respect and kindness? Or was she just another spoiled young woman who thought the world owed her something simply for having been born in the right place? The doubt was uncomfortable, but it was also necessary. And as tears wet her Egyptian silk pillow, Isabella began to understand that perhaps, just perhaps, she needed to relearn what it meant to see people as people, not as social positions. It was the beginning of something. Painful but necessary, a growth that hurt as much as it healed, and all because of a woman who had spent 5 years invisible, but who, somehow, was changing everyone around her simply by being who she was, true. The days following the disastrous business dinner were strange, and at the same time, transformative. The mansion seemed different, as if the air had changed its composition. Raphael walked lighter, even having lost a multi-million-dollar deal. Marina still maintained her professional discretion, but there was a new sparkle in her eyes, a lightness in her steps that wasn't there before. And Isabella was silent, but it was a thoughtful silence, no longer that defensive silence from before. A week passed. Then 2, and it was Isabella who surprised everyone one Saturday morning when she came down for coffee and, upon finding Marina arranging flowers in the living room, stopped and simply said, "I'm sorry." Marina turned, surprised. "Isabella?" The young woman looked at the floor, her hands nervously intertwined. "For what I said that night, for what I've said and done over the past few months, I wasn't being fair to you. I wasn't being the person my mother taught me to be." Marina put the flowers aside and approached slowly. "You were protecting your father. You were protecting your mother's memory. I understand that. No, Isabella shook her head, finally finding the courage to look into Marina's eyes. I was being cowardly. I was afraid of changes, afraid of losing my father to someone else, afraid that my privileged life would be questioned, and I ended up becoming the kind of person I always said I hated, someone who judges others by what they have, not by who they are. Tears were streaming down Isabella's face now. Marina, without a second thought, pulled her into a hug. Isabella clung to her like a lost child, sobbing. I miss my mother every day, Isabella confessed between sobs. And when I saw my father looking at you that way, it was as if she was being replaced. But she isn't, right? She'll always be here in his heart, in my heart. And you. You're not trying to take her place. You're just being you. Marina gently stroked the young woman's blonde hair. I could never replace your mother, Isabella. Nor do I want to. She was an incredible woman from what your father tells me. And you are proof of that. Because underneath all this fear you have a kind heart, just like hers. They stood there embracing for long minutes, two women who had been adversaries becoming something different. Not friends yet, perhaps, but not enemies either. It was a start. When they separated, Isabella let out a wet laugh. You know my father is completely in love with you, right? Marina felt her face flush. Isabella. No, seriously, the young woman insisted, wiping her face. I've never seen him that way. Not even when my mother was alive. It's different. It's more intense, you know, as if he had woken up from years of sleep. And does that bother you? Isabella thought for a moment. It used to bother me. But now I think I just want him to be happy. And you too, because you both deserve it. At that moment, Raphael appeared in the room and stopped when he saw the two of them together, their eyes red, but smiles on their faces. He looked from one to the other, confused but hopeful. Is everything all right here? Yes, Dad, Isabella said and went to him to hug him. Everything's all right now. Raphael hugged her back, confused but relieved, and over his daughter's shoulder his eyes met Marina's. There was a promise in that look, a promise that things were changing, a promise of possible futures. Weeks passed. January arrived, bringing the peak of summer and something more. It was January 25th, exactly 3 months after Marina's birthday. She expected nothing special. She never did. But that morning when she woke up, there was a note under her door. The first note in months. Wear something comfortable. Someone will pick you up at 6 in the evening. Trust me. Marina held the paper with trembling hands. What was Raphael planning? She spent the day in a strange anxiety, divided between excitement and nervousness. At 5 in the afternoon, she allowed herself to put on a simple white cotton dress, let her hair down for the first time in years, apply a little light pink lipstick. At 6 o'clock sharp, Jorge appeared at the annex door with a wide smile. Ready, girl. We have a surprise waiting. She followed him to a car that belonged to neither of them. During the drive, Jorge just smiled mysteriously, not answering any of her questions. When they finally stopped, Marina recognized the place. It was Hotel Almeida Mar, the boutique hotel Raphael owned on the Jurerê beachfront, the one considered the most charming in the region. But there was something different. The hotel garden, usually reserved for corporate events, was transformed. There were festival lights hung in the trees, creating a brilliant canopy of artificial stars. There were flower petals scattered across the lawn, and there were people. Donna Lourdes was there, smiling. Jorge was already running to join the others. And there was more. Children Marina recognized from a volunteer project where she helped on weekends in Barra da Lagoa. Teachers from the public school where she occasionally donated books. Her distant aunt from Caxias do Sul, whom she hadn't seen in 2 years. And in the center of it all, on a small improvised stage decorated with sunflowers, her favorite flowers, stood Raphael. Beside him, Isabella, who waved with a genuine smile. Marina brought her hands to her mouth, tears already flowing. What is this? It's a celebration, came Raphael's voice through a discreet microphone, of the person who always deserved to be celebrated. Marina Silva, welcome to your birthday party, the one you never had, the one you always deserved. The music began to play, something soft and emotional. People began to approach one by one, greeting Marina, hugging her, wishing her happiness. Her aunt came first, crying as much as her niece. I didn't know you missed family so much, my child. I didn't know. You didn't know because I never let you see, Marina replied, hugging her tightly. But now I want you to see. I want you to be a part of it. The children from the project came next, jumping with joy, handing over drawings they had made for her. One of the school teachers handed her a letter signed by all the students, thanking her for the donations that, they later discovered, came from Marina with the little she managed to save every month. You never told us, the teacher said emotionally. You never wanted credit. You just helped in silence. Marina was sobbing now, overwhelmed by the presence of all those people, by the affection she never knew existed. And then, when the first greetings ended, when the music quieted down, Raphael stepped down from the stage and walked over to her. "May I have a moment?" he asked, extending his hand. Marina nodded, speechless, and accepted his hand. He led her to the center of the garden, where the stage was now lit by candles and by the golden light of the sunset that was beginning to tinge the sky with orange and pink. "Marina," he began, still holding her hands, 3 months ago, you sang happy birthday to yourself, thinking you were alone, thinking no one saw, no one cared. And that night I understood 2 things. First, that I had spent 3 years so lost in my own pain that I forgot to see the world. And second, that you were the strongest person I had ever known, because being alone is easy when you choose it. But you didn't choose it. You survived. You continued to be kind in a world that was never kind to you. You continued to care for flowers even when no one cared for you. Marina was trembling, tears still falling. The people around were in absolute silence, witnessing that moment. In recent months, Raphael continued, his voice emotional, you taught me what it means to live with dignity, what it means to make choices based on principles, not convenience. And I fell in love, not with the employee, not with the staff member, but with Marina, with the woman who smiles even when tired, with the woman who sings in the shower when she thinks no one is listening, with the woman who talks to plants, with the woman who gives everything she has even when she has almost nothing, with the woman who made me want to be better. He released one of her hands and reached into his pocket. When he pulled it out, there was a small velvet box. Marina sobbed harder. "This is not a diamond ring," Raphael said, opening the box to reveal a simple ring with an amber stone, honey-colored, exactly like her eyes. "Because you are not a woman of excesses. You are a woman of truth. And amber is resin that turned to stone over time. It is something soft that became strong without losing its beauty. Like you." Raphael got down on one knee and the entire garden seemed to hold its breath. "Marina Silva, I am not asking you to be my companion in loneliness. I am asking you to be my life partner. I am not asking you to fill a void. I am asking you to build something new with me. Something that is ours, something that is true. Would you give me the honor of spending the rest of my days proving that you have always been worthy of being seen, of being loved, of being celebrated?" Marina couldn't speak. She just nodded frantically, her hands trembling so much that Raphael had to hold them firmly to place the ring. When he finally managed to slip it onto her finger, Marina bent down and hugged him right there on the ground in tears. "Yes," she finally managed to whisper in his ear. 1,000 times yes. The garden erupted in applause and shouts of joy. Donna Lourdes was in tears, being comforted by Jorge, who also couldn't hold back his tears. Marina's aunt laughed and cried at the same time. The children jumped with excitement, not fully understanding what had happened but feeling the magic of that moment. And Isabella was on the stage, her hands on her chest, openly weeping. When Marina and Raphael finally stood up and looked at her, the young woman ran down and hugged them, the 3 of them forming a tight circle of affection and hope. "You taught me to see," Isabella whispered in Marina's ear. "You taught me that the heart doesn't choose by status, it chooses by truth. Thank you." Marina hugged her tighter, and at that moment they were no longer the employee and the boss's daughter. They were 2 women who had found family in each other. The party continued long into the night. There was food prepared by Donna Lourdes, which exceeded all expectations. There was music, dancing, shared stories. Marina met people she had helped without knowing the impact she had made. Teachers told how her donations had allowed children to access life-changing books. The children themselves recounted how she always had a smile, always had a kind word on weekends when she went to the volunteer project. "I didn't know," Marina repeated through tears. I didn't know I had made a difference. You always made a difference, Raphael said, hugging her by the waist. They just never let you know. When the party finally ended, it was already past midnight. People left gradually, leaving hugs and promises to return. Marina's aunt arranged a family lunch for the following month. Donna Lourdes and Jorge returned to the mansion, commenting on weddings and the future. Isabella kissed both their cheeks and said she was going to sleep at a friend's house, but would be back the next day to help with the planning. Raphael and Marina were left alone in the now empty garden, sitting on one of the benches under the festival lights that still glowed. I can't believe this is real, Marina whispered, looking at the ring that caught the light from the lamps. It's real, Raphael said, kissing the top of her head. And it will continue to be real tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and every day after that. Are you sure? She asked, and there was still a shadow of doubt. Sure you won't wake up one day and realize you made a mistake? Raphael made her look at him, gently holding her face. Marina, the only thing I'm sure of in life is this. You are not a mistake. You are the most right decision I have ever made. She smiled through her tears and for the first time allowed herself to believe completely. To believe she deserved it. To believe she was worthy of being loved. To believe that happy stories didn't just happen in soap operas, but in real life too, for real people, with real hearts. The wedding happened 2 months later in March, when summer was starting to give way to autumn. But the heat was still pleasant. It wasn't in a church. It wasn't in a luxurious hall. It was on the beach, at the foot of the mansion, in the late afternoon as the sun set over the Atlantic, painting everything golden. Marina walked barefoot on the sand, a simple white linen dress she had chosen herself, her hair loose in the wind, a bouquet of sunflowers in her hands. There was no formal aisle. There was no orchestra. Just a guitar played by a friend of Jorge's, a soft melody that matched the sound of the waves. Raphael waited for her at the front, barefoot too, wearing beige linen pants and a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves. Beside him, Isabella as a bridesmaid in a light pink dress, a radiant smile. On the other side, Marina's aunt also as a bridesmaid, emotional from the first musical note. Donna Lourdes, Jorge, friends from the social project, Raphael's colleagues who truly mattered, all formed a small semicircle on the sand, witnessing that improbable but perfectly right union. The officiant, a childhood friend of Raphael's who was a judge, led the ceremony with simple but profound words about love that defies expectations, about the courage to choose truth over appearance, about how the best stories are those that no one expects, but everyone recognizes as true when they happen. When it was time for the vows, Raphael took Marina's hands and said, his voice choked, I promise you will never celebrate birthdays alone again. You will never sing happy birthday without someone singing along. You will never again feel like you need to be invisible to be safe. I promise to see you every day for the rest of my life, to see who you are, to admire who you become, and to be by your side in all the versions yet to come. Marina was openly crying now, but they were happy tears. I promise never to hide again. I promise to believe you when you say you love me. I promise not to be afraid to take up space, to have a voice, to be seen. And I promise to love you not despite our differences, but because of them. Because you showed me that love doesn't see classes. It only sees hearts. When the officiant said, you may kiss the bride, Raphael pulled Marina into a gentle kiss, and the beach erupted in applause and shouts of joy. The sun set exactly at that moment, as if the universe was marking that instant as something special, something to be remembered forever. The celebration that followed was simple but perfect. Wooden tables on the sand, homemade food prepared by Donna Lourdes, wine and cold beer, live music and lots of dancing. Raphael and Marina opened the improvised dance floor, dancing barefoot on the sand, laughing when they stumbled, kissing between awkward steps. Isabella danced with Jorge, who despite his age had surprisingly good moves. Marina's aunt joined Donna Lourdes, and the two became instant friends, already planning future family lunches. The project children ran along the beach, chasing waves and building sandcastles that the sea washed away, but which they rebuilt with infinite joy. When night fell completely and the stars appeared in the clear sky, Raphael and Marina moved a little away from the party, walking along the seashore hand in hand. Are you happy? Raphael asked. More than I imagined was possible, Marina answered honestly. You? I'm not just happy, Raphael said, stopping to look at her. I'm alive. For the first time in years, I am truly alive. They kissed there with the sound of the waves and the party in the background, with the taste of salt on their lips, with their whole future ahead. And it was perfect. Not perfect like in stories that promise everything is easy, but perfect like in real life, where love is a choice, it is work, it is a daily decision to keep seeing the other person, to keep choosing, to keep building. Years passed as they usually do when life is full. Not slowly and heavily, but quickly and richly. The mansion, which was once a mausoleum of silences, transformed into a noisy and chaotic home in the best possible way. 2 years after the wedding, Lorenzo was born, a boy with honey-colored eyes like his mother and a mischievous smile like his father. The mansion filled with toys scattered on the floor, with children's laughter echoing through the corridors, with children's songs playing in every room. Marina, who had never had a real family, was now surrounded by one. Raphael, who had forgotten what it was like to be a present father, was now involved in every moment. Diaper changes, sleepless nights, first words, first steps. Isabella, who had graduated in advertising, came back whenever she could to visit. And it wasn't just to see her father. It was to see Marina, who had become a kind of mentor and friend. It was to see her half-brother, who adored her and shouted, "Isa!" every time she arrived. The young woman had changed profoundly. She now worked for an NGO providing education for underprivileged children, using her privileges to open doors for those who never had any. She had found a purpose that went beyond parties and trips. She had found meaning. Marina taught me that privilege is responsibility, not a right, she said in an interview for a social impact magazine that featured her work. She taught me to see people as people, not as positions. And that changed everything. Donna Lourdes continued working at the mansion, but now divided her time helping Marina with the baby and teaching her to cook elaborate dishes. "You're the lady of the house now," she would say, laughing. But Marina always rejected the term. "We are partners. We are family." Jorge retired at 65, but continued to show up every week to tend the garden because, in his words, "These plants grew under my care. I won't abandon them now." And every time he visited, he brought new stories from the countryside that made Lorenzo laugh and Marina feel emotional. Raphael expanded his businesses, but in a different way. No longer seeking only profit, but impact. He opened an employment program for vulnerable people in all his hotels. He created an education foundation with Isabella. He donated a significant portion of the profits to the social projects where Marina worked as a volunteer. He had learned that success was not measured only by bank account numbers, but by lives touched. And Marina blossomed in ways she never imagined possible. She went back to school, finished the pedagogy degree she had abandoned years ago due to lack of resources. She started working with Raphael and Isabella on social projects, developing educational programs. She wrote a book about her story that became an inspiration for many people who also felt invisible. But above all, she learned to take up space, to have a voice, to no longer hide. One October afternoon, 5 years after the wedding, Marina was on the mansion's balcony watching Raphael teach Lorenzo to fly a kite on the beach. The boy, now 3 years old, ran along the sand, shouting with joy every time the kite went up. Raphael ran after him, laughing in that free way he never imagined he could again. Isabella was sitting beside Marina, also watching the scene, a soft smile on her face. "Have you ever stopped to think about how surreal all of this is?" Isabella asked. Marina laughed. "Every day. Every single day I wake up and have to pinch myself to make sure it's real." "Do you know what I find most incredible?" Isabella continued. "It's that you haven't changed. You're still the same kind, humble, gentle person. The only difference is that now you believe you deserve all of this." Marina looked at the young woman and smiled. "You've changed too, you know. You've become the woman your mother would be proud to see." Isabella felt her eyes sting. "Do you think so?" "I'm sure." They stayed there side by side, watching the man and the boy playing on the beach, the wind carrying the sound of laughter and the sea. And Marina thought about everything she had lived through. She thought about the girl who lost her mother too soon. She thought about the young woman who had her heart broken. She thought about the woman who sang Happy Birthday alone, thinking no one saw her. And she thought about the woman she was now, loved, seen, celebrated. Life hadn't been perfect. It still wasn't. There were difficult days, arguments, challenges, but there was love. There was truth. There was a daily choice to keep seeing, to keep loving, to keep building. And as the sun began to set once more over that beach that had witnessed so much, Marina placed her hand on her growing belly, the second baby, a girl due in April, and smiled. She smiled for all the versions of herself who thought they would never be enough. She smiled for all the invisible women still out there, waiting to be seen. She smiled because life had proven that impossible stories sometimes happen, not because reality bends to our desires, but because sometimes, just sometimes, courageous people make courageous choices. And those choices change everything.